This episode is brought to you by AudioQuest, makers of the mythical series Analog Interconnects. Click the link in the show notes for more information.
All right then, Srajan, we are back for another round of podcasting about hi-fi news items that have surfaced of late. And as always, we're going to try and go further than the press release, further than the basic information given to us by the manufacturers. And the first one we want to talk about today, I believe, is the Meze Alba wired earphone. Am I correct?
Yes, I have one.
You have
here,
a pair, right? Yeah.
And I know that some people will only listen and not watch, but those who do watch, we're talking about a small IEM, which makes it an in-ear, and the slightly perhaps unusual thing is that on the back there we have what looks like a port inside the throat of a miniature horn.
Yeah. Is it? I mean, it looks like it is, but is it?
It is a port, yes.
Okay,
It's a pressure relief valve. Maybe that's how we could call it.
So
and they retail for 159 euros. And it is a single dynamic driver that measures 10 or maybe 12 millimeters across.
Okay. Right. But that announcement, I think I can hear my voice in your headphones, Srajan. Maybe I need to talk more quietly. We've been through this before, so I don't see why it's a problem. Anyway, so that announcement took place, 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, right? Now,
well, July. Wait a minute. Was it
July 1st?
10th? No, July 10th, I think, was the big reveal.
Mm-hmm. So you would have got your pair several weeks beforehand, am I correct?
Exactly. And there was an embargo, and I didn't quite understand what it meant until after the fact, and I think that's what we might want to talk about.
We do. We want to talk about embargoed news items where advanced samples get sent out to reviewers because the manufacturer would really love it if the reviews were all published on the same day. Now, before we get into that, I want to qualify a couple of things. I have no beef with Meze whatsoever. I think they're wonderful people. I get on with them very well when I see them in Munich. I have made reviews of several of their products. I think everything that I've reviewed by them has been absolutely fantastic. But last year, when they released the Lyric 2 headphone, I did notice that on announcement day, there were maybe 3 or 4 different review videos landing on YouTube on the same day. It's called a day zero review, I think, or maybe that's what it's colloquially known as. So when Meze contacted me, maybe in May or June, about sending me a pair of Alba, I was very wary because I thought they're going to do the same thing again. And I said to them, thank you, but no thank you. A side note here, because this product is also, I guess we would call, on the more affordable side of what we normally do at 160 bucks, 160 quid. I'm getting to the point now where I think that if it's available on Amazon with some kind of free return service, if you don't like it, my or your services as reviewers, I don't know how much import we have when it's so easy for the potential owner, buyer, for them to just put in a bit of work themselves and buy it, try it, and then send it back if they don't like it.
I think the work you and I are supposed to do.
Well, yeah, but I'm starting to think that maybe it would be better aimed at slightly more expensive things. I don't mean crazy expensive things, and I know that you and I both do a range of price points. But anyway, this is a side issue. I guess that the main thrust of my I guess it is a grumble, is that when the Alba was finally made public, when it was on launch day, maybe it was July 1st or something like that, I took a look at YouTube and there were like 20 videos. 20 videos all going out on the same day, day zero reviews. Now, not all of them were, I guess, what we call independent reviewers. Some were from retail outlets and things like that, but it was 20. So Meze had obviously just flicked them all out there, these samples, and said to everybody who'd got a sample, please don't publish your review until this date. And then because reviewers want, especially with YouTube, they want to get as many eyeballs as possible on their video, they're going to put it out as soon as they can after the embargo lifts, right?
Right.
So you end up with going from no reviews to 20, and I think that devalues everybody's work, everybody who's made a video. Because like, where do you start? I mean, even if somebody's got some valuable insight, like it's going to get lost in this, what I call a promotional wave, artificially generated by the manufacturer.
Well, I call it carpet bombing, YouTube carpet bombing.
Right.
And it looks to the outsider like an advertorial campaign. Very carefully orchestrated and synced up by somebody behind the scenes, which in this instance is the manufacturer. Yeah. And I wasn't really hip to this because I'm not a YouTuber, right? I'm an old school print media online guy now.
Well, you're a YouTuber now, Srajan.
I guess but I got the Alba press release, which was embargoed, and I didn't realize that the embargo also related to my review, because I'm somebody who always publishes a preview the moment an agreement has been inked. When the manufacturer says, yes, I'm going to send it to you, sometimes within 2 hours I have the preview up, and then 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later, whenever the thing trundles in, I take my own pictures and off we go.
Yeah.
So I get the Alba, I write my preview. Within 2 hours, I sent the link back thinking that they'd be very pleased with the advanced coverage. And I'm being told in no uncertain terms that, didn't I see the embargo?
Right.
And I said, well, this is a preview. This is just letting people know it exists. And by the way, you, Meze, were at the Munich show a month prior. And here are 5 YouTube mentions on the Munich show of the Alba with photos and specs and pricing. And I sent them the links. And I said, so this is okay, but me coming a month after saying the same thing all over again on my site is not okay? And I was told, no, you're okay. You can leave it stand.
Okay.
But the review should not happen until the embargo lift, which I believe was the 1st or the 10th. And yes, I've opted out already. I don't like this way of doing the business, and this might just be me being from the prior generation, and this is the direction that things are trending, at least on YouTube. And I've also noticed that you just put up a preview or sneak teaser of the new monitor audio studio, what is it called, the 89 or?
Studio 89, yeah.
Yes, and you also withheld your listening impressions because it's a similar situation. There was an embargo date, and the moment that embargo was lifted, we already had, 10 or 12 YouTube videos going up? So there does seem to be a trend.
Yeah, it was more than I anticipated. I did have the presence of mind to ask Monitor Audio when they were offering this to me, like, do you want to review this, John? I said, like, who else are you sending this to? And they told me 3 people. They omitted one other YouTuber that I think was fairly pertinent to would have been pertinent to my decision. I probably still would have done it, but I'm not down with this idea of sending out advanced review samples in order to generate a flurry of reviews on announcement day. Now, I know that many YouTubers or reviewers be super excited to get stuff in advance. Oh my God, Meze and Monitor Audio have thought of me, of everybody else. I've got early access to this thing. But I think you're shooting yourself and your colleagues in the foot by saying yes to that kind of artificially orchestrated campaign. And this has, by the way, I've got to clarify this has nothing to do with me wanting to have an exclusive, because there will be people who go, oh, John just wants an exclusive. Right. No, I don't. And in fact, one of the wonderful things about doing videos on YouTube is that it is less time sensitive than the website. And what I mean by that is that I could review a speaker that's 3 or 4 years old, which I'm going to do soon actually, and I know it's going to do really well. And it was also the case with the Wharfdale Linton. I did that 2 years after it had been launched, and that video did supremely well. So there's there's a good amount of long-term interest in hi-fi products on YouTube, and it's not so cutthroat in terms of getting or being first in the hi-fi world on YouTube. And I think manufacturers should pay attention to that and not be in a hurry to kind of spray reviewers with samples to get as much early coverage as possible. They could, I mean, I've spoken to one PR guy who says, like, yeah, we want to stage it. They've got, there's another speaker company who wants to send me something, but I think that's the best way to do it. I think it's the way is staging it. And the reason I say this is because this is commonplace in the smartphone world and in the camera world. So when a new Sony camera drops, there's like 5 videos day 0. If a new Android smartphone drops, there's 10 videos day 0, right? But all the guys that get access, guys and girls get access to samples early, are told under no uncertain terms that no coverage should go up before a certain date. Sometimes some mobile phone manufacturers will say you can show the hardware on or after this date, but no software. No, you can't show any of the operating system because they haven't got it finished. They're going to roll out a last-minute update, and they'll be like 2 weeks later. Then you can show the software. So there's a lot of sort of controlling behaviour goes on, and I think the smartphone world, the computer world, to a lesser extent the camera world, is big enough to sustain that. I don't think the hi-fi world is. I really don't. I think it stands out. The Alba sort of use your term. Yeah, their carpet bomb launch stood out like proverbial dog's balls, and I just don't think it's a good look for the manufacturer either. The manufacturer is of course free to disagree, and they are free to do exactly what they want, right? They don't have to listen to you or I, but this is just you or I giving our opinion on the matter, right?
Well, I remember the shoe used to be on the other foot, because I used to be working for a manufacturer as a national sales manager, and I was involved in organizing reviews. That was part of my responsibility. And common sense told me, and it's not that I invented it, that's how everybody else did it too, is that, you stage reviews so that if you have a year's worth of planning and you have 4 reviewers that you believe would be interested in accepting your solicitation, that you time them. So that during the summer, when you know sales are going to be slow, you'll have a review, and then you might have another one in August, September, and then as the selling season at the end of the year comes on, you might have another 2. So you're very strategic about keeping the product visible. You don't just sort of spray it all at once and then nothing. And let's say that Meze decided that they needed a sort of a second wave, because interest in Alba had sort of peaked and then it had sort of ebbed down. Who would now be interested in covering Alba if there's now 25 reviews out there?
Yes, right. I mean, somebody might, but I think some of the, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, maybe the headphones.com guys who sell, headphones, so that it's in their interest to kind of promote things in that way. Maybe they would do it. I don't know. But, I think your average reviewer probably would steer well clear, especially, when they know that what's gone on launch day. And I guess we're talking about this because I think we don't want it to, I don't want to see this spread. I think it's an ugly look. Again, manufacturers can do what they want. It's their business, right? But I'm just saying, take another look at this, because you're not the mobile phone industry or the camera industry. We don't have the right number. We don't have sufficient people to support this way of promoting things. And it's just, I think it's a race to the bottom in terms of quality.
I agree, and which is why I've already opted out. If I'm reapproached by anyone that tells me by what date I'm allowed to publish a review, I'm opting out. This was the first time in 22 years that somebody told me a date. Now, I've seen it before with news items that are embargoed. I get them all the time from Macintosh. There's always a date attached. But this was the first time that I ran across this being associated with you may publish your opinion by that date and not before. And I'm sorry, but I'm opting out of that kind of restriction.
Yeah, I think because there's so much gear out there for us to cover. Yeah. I can be picky about what I cover. And I mean, you mentioned the Monitor Audio and the Studio 89. I mean, it takes me a while to kind of do comparisons and things like that, but I am withholding my review. I was going to make it before the LS35A video initially, but when I saw how many YouTube videos were already up, it's not just reviewers again, it's also retailers, but I thought, no, I don't want to be caught in that initial wave, so I'm going to kind of just wait a couple of weeks and then make my video and put it up. And it'll probably be, in a week or so from now. But even then, it's still closer than I would like, but I don't have enough review gear to kind of substitute in for that. So I've got the Studio 89 and I'm going to do it. And they are a great speaker, there's no doubt about it, but it's just, and I'm not saying that I'm going to be, Monitor Audio didn't pull a Swifty here or anything like that. I asked how many, which reviewers were going to have it early. They told me bar one, but I guess I wasn't really expecting, that one reviewer plus a whole bunch of others, like maybe amateurs or retailers. Because I tell you one thing about YouTube is that hi-fi retailers have got their shit together, Srajan, when it comes to YouTube. They are some of the most prolific producers of good video content out there, which is confusing to the newcomer maybe, because you're going to try to work out, is this a retailer or is this not a retailer? It blurs the lines a little bit when it's not disclosed up front.
I mean, I'm on the group email list for Moon Audio, and I think I get a video link every week about some new headphone item that they sell, and I haven't opted out of the list because this is how I find out about new things. But
right, and their videos are good.
Yeah, they are. But I don't watch the whole video. I just go there to find out, okay, I've never heard of this model, and then let me find out, go to the manufacturer's website. So I use it as a resource for news.
Yeah.
But I mean, it used to be very frowned upon. I mean, remember the days when us guys on the internet publishing reviews, we were sort of outcast and we were like second or third class relative to print reviews. Print reviews sort of they were legit. They were established, they told the truth, and we were just the also-runs, and we were sort of frowned upon. Well, that has obviously changed. And now I think YouTube is sort of the next newest thing, and they have to, they're fighting for legitimacy, and they're shaking out who are the really serious guys, sort of the first-tier guys, and the second-tier guys, and the third-tier guys. But the lines have crossed between whether it's okay for somebody that works in the industry, even selling, whether they are also allowed to review the product or pay somebody on their staff to review product on their behalf. That used to be completely frowned upon. You couldn't do it in print, and if somebody found out, you would immediately get fired. The same was true and remains true for my website. Nobody could review for me who is like working at a retailer's, even if they don't review things that retailer sells. But there is still potential bias and a conflict of interest. But nowadays, that requirement seems to have softened. And even the audience that consumes these reviews doesn't feel put out by the fact that, well, is this an independent review or is this a quasi-advertorial because the person that's reviewing is actually selling the product, or the person is on their staff and is paid by the one that's actually reaping the benefits and making the profits? It seems to be okay these days. For me, for my website and my business model, it's still not okay.
I think it might be a generational thing, because the people that generally are engaging in the area of reviewing as part of, say, a retail outlet, or, they're sort of crossing the stream, so to speak, tend to be much younger. And they're actually really good at what they do.
No, they are.
And I have spoken to one of them, and he said to me, look, I would not have been able to carry on being an independent had I not made the leap to go and work with this online retailer. And I'm very sympathetic to that, because I know that, if it's either this or nothing, I get it. It doesn't mean I agree with it, and it doesn't mean I kind of feel any animosity towards anybody. It's just that when I started out, because it was 2010 and it was just a website and YouTube, well, it was a thing, but it wasn't really a thing for hi-fi. I looked to Stereophile and Taz and your site to see where the lines were. And I know you and I conversed about this quite a lot, because I was trying to frantically work out in 2013, why was this one person seemingly allowed to kind of be PR in the day and then reviewer at night, you know? And I know that we had a lot of conversation about that. And I still look to this sort of Stereophile model of things, of, you know, where John Atkinson's pretty staunch about this. I know he's not the editor anymore, but, you know, you're not allowed to moonlight as a PR person or a manufacturer's consultant. I mean, I know that several YouTubers have worked with manufacturers to produce special versions of DACs and amps. And then interestingly, actually, Clinical, who for years and years and years measured headphones and then had a YouTube channel reviewing headphones, but also worked with, I've got to get this right, Moondrop, FiiO, and one other to produce special edition headphones. He was sort of playing both sides of the coin. And this week he's quit. He's said, I'm not reviewing anymore because I'm starting a retail store, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do. You know, is to say, well, I'm picking my lane and this is going to be my lane. After years of, I think he said he was half-assing both sides of the coin for some time. And I mean, I know when I talk about this, and I know I've talked about this many times in the past, I'm not trying to tell people what they should do. I'm just explaining where my lines sit and hope that that would inspire somebody else to kind of follow suit or not. But I'm not looking to pick a fight with anybody or, you know, tell people they shouldn't do that.
And you just said before, and I think it's very likely that you're right, it's probably a generational thing. Like you and I came up under the sort of aegis or umbrella of Stereophile and the Absolute Sound, having been doing it a lot longer than us. And we sort of modeled ourselves after them and then tried to transplant that business model to online. And of course, Doug Schneider had already been there prior to you and me starting out. Mm-hmm. But those sort of were all sort of interrelated in terms of we were all watching each other. And I think trying to occupy a sort of shared common ground. And now YouTube, like you said, it's a different audience. It's a younger audience. It's a different way of consuming information on the go. Mm-hmm. Even music consumption on the go is different from the old sitting downstairs, the lone wolf with his system, door closed, you know, lights off.
Totally. Yeah.
So, like you, I'm not condemning anyone. I'm just noticing there's a change, and I need to decide how far along do I want to follow that trend, and where do I want to sort of put my foot down and say, that's not for me. I'm going to keep sticking to the old-fashioned way of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to be a head case today, more than usual, believe it or not.
Okay. Not possible.
Head case in this case means headphone.
Okay.
So I have a new product, in fact, 2 new products from the same company. And I'm going to start out by asking you a question. I know that you have not done a whole lot of tube gear, but you have done some.
A little bit.
Do you know what the reason or the function is for an output transformer? What does it do? Why do we need one?
This is for the impedance adjustment, right? To level the impedance relationship between the headphone and the output stage of the amp, right?
Yes, it's not just specific to headphones. You know, it could be a speaker amplifier.
It could be speakers as well.
It could be a tube preamp or tube DAC. But yeah, it's about getting the high impedance of the tubes down to an impedance that the load will expect to see. So if we have a 4 or 8 ohm speaker, we don't want a 300 ohm output impedance on a tube amp. We need it to be down closer to 8 ohms.
Right.
Or 4 ohms, or possibly even below that, because a solid state amplifier may have 0.005 ohm output impedance. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's why we need a tube output transformer. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to introduce a product that's using output transformers that are very unusual. Okay. Now, a typical tube output transformer is using steel laminations in its core and then windings. So it has a primary winding and it has a secondary winding, and the ratio between those two determines the impedance step down. Mm-hmm. Steel weighs a lot. And if you get a tube amplifier and you have 3 transformers on the top beneath cowls, 2 of which are output transformers, 1 of which is a power transformer in the middle, and you lift the bloody thing up, you realize you have to put the hands on the back where the transformers are because the weight is so asymmetrical, and these things are really, really heavy. So I asked Sasha Kocic at Trafamatic Audio in Serbia, who designs and winds his own output transformers. I said to him, if I unspooled the primary winding on a 300B single-ended output transformer, how many meters would that be? He said, well, I can't speak for everybody else, but I can tell you with my transformer, on my smallest 300B amplifier, which is 15 cubic centimeters, 15 by 15 by 15, it's 250 meters.
Holy smokes.
250 meters of copper cable that equals 67 ohm impedance. Just that cable. And I said to Sasha, what are the challenges with output transformer design? He said, well, with a single-ended output transformer, the bigger it gets, the more the capacitance between the layers starts to roll off the treble. So he said, we don't want the transformer too big because it starts to roll off the treble. But he says, in order to do the bass, we need a big transformer because otherwise we don't transfer enough bass energy to the speaker. So we can immediately see there is a compromise involved. You can't have one without negatively impacting the other. Well, in 1997, David Burning in America got a patent on something he calls ZOTL, Z-O-T-L, which stands for Zero Hysteresis Output Transformerless Design.
Okay.
And so what he is doing, he's taking the signal, he is upsampling it. Now we're talking about a purely analog circuit. That's why I'm putting upsampling in parentheses. He's upsampling the signal to a radio frequency, like we used to have a carrier frequency that the radio signal used to travel on. That's where the signal gets amplified. And then it goes through these air core, very, very small, like a donut hole small radio frequency impedance converters. And the impedance gets stepped down to where the loudspeaker, or in this case, the headphone wants to see it. Now, with usual output transformers, you have at best a 1:20 ratio. You can't really do many more windings, then you start running into problems. With this burning solution, which is patented, you can have ratios of 150 to 300.
Wow, okay.
So you can step down much, much further. The parts are much smaller. They have much better square wave performance. They don't suffer the typical challenges of steel core output transformers. They have wider bandwidth. So in this amplifier that I'm going to introduce, the bandwidth is from 2 Hertz to 100 kilohertz minus 3 dB. Sasha aims for minus 3 dB at 10 Hertz for his standard output transformers.
Okay.
So you think, well, 10 Hertz, we can't hear there anyways. 2 Hertz, we can't hear that anyways. What's the difference? Well, the difference is 3 octaves.
Yeah.
So if this burning output transformer has 3 octaves worth more bandwidth, we have less phase shift within the audible range. We have better bass. Okay, so this amplifier comes with a remote control.
I thought you were going to pick up the whole amplifier then.
Yeah. It just came in today. So
Okay,
there's
this
a
is
nice
a linear
little
tube
remote,
audio.
Yeah, linear tube audio. There's a little remote control with like volume up, down, and mute and input switching. And then,
Oh god, you actually do have the amplifier with you.
then we have, let's see how far I have to go away so we can see this thing whole. Okay.
Okay,
So
it's called the Velo.
It's called the Velo. It's about a foot square.
Yeah, 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters, yeah.
Yeah.
And on top you've got 4 tubes. What are they?
Yeah, I'm going to get there in a moment. And so on the back, we have three single-ended inputs.
Yep.
And 2 single-ended outputs.
Okay.
And on top, then we have input tubes. Let's see, here we go. So those are 12 AT7s or 12 AU7s. You can use them interchangeably. You will just change the gain. And then here in the back, we have 6 SN7 or 12 SN7. They're the same tube. One comes with a 6 volt heater, one with a 12 volt heater. And to decide which one to use, you just select this switch. And you don't do this while you're listening, but that sets the bias properly for that tube.
Okay.
So on the front, then we have an input selector, the on-off switch, the volume control. This talks to a switched R2R ladder. And the interesting thing is, which I don't have it plugged in right now, is that there is an LED that's lit that keeps traveling with setting. And each time you change the volume, all the LEDs below the one that you have selected will come up temporarily. And then you turn it up or you turn it down, all the LEDs will keep following. And then all the LEDs after a couple of seconds will switch off and will only leave the one on that you have selected.
Right.
So this is not just a headphone amp with a 6.3 millimeter output socket, but it's also a very useful preamp. When I say useful, not just for the near field, where you can actually touch the volume control, but in the far field, where this thing might sit 3 or 4 meters away from the chair, you want remote control for volume, and you want to be able to see where the volume is set.
Yes. Yep.
Now, we talked about output transformers. What does this unusual RF impedance converter that David Burning patented, what does it do for the output impedance of this Velo? We get 1.1 ohm output impedance on the headphone socket, and we get 50 ohms on the pre-outs. They could have given us lower, but you don't want to be lower. 50 ohms is about as low as you want to go on a preamp. Now, the power supply is this, which is basically like a laptop brick. And it is
exactly the same size as a laptop brick, And
it comes from a Taiwan company called Meanwell. They're like the #1 provider for military and medical grade switch mode power supplies. And what does medical grade really mean? All it means is 24/7. It means that a switch mode power supply that has the medical grade application is designed to be on 24/7 without interruption, because you don't want to be a patient on equipment and in the middle of the night the power supply craps out and off you go. That's all it means. Now, the Velo is $2,100 with this switch mode power supply, and for an additional $600 you can get this linear power supply.
Okay, and you've got a naked one here which has the power supply at the top and the toroidal at the bottom. Yeah, that's kind of substantial.
Yeah, it's very substantial. It weighs quite a lot, and it has obviously a power inlet at the back. Then it has a XLR3 output. I took the top off. Completely ordinary, but very, very quiet. And so that's a $600 upgrade.
Srajan, would you say that a linear power supply vis-a-vis a switch mode qualifies as audiophile catnip?
I would, conceptually, but I would also say that some of it is based on presumptions and misunderstandings.
Absolutely.
And that nowadays there are switch mode power supplies specifically made for audio that perform better than an equivalent linear power supply. And Chord Company in the UK would be a company that has for maybe now 2 decades promoted switching power supplies. Nagra has been doing it for a long time, though people don't know about it.
When you say Chord Company, do you mean Chord Electronics or Chord Company?
Not the cable company.
So Chord Electronics,
Chord Electronics,
got to be careful with that. Yeah.
Manly Labs in the United States, they commissioned Bruni Putsies from Hypex and Encore and Purify to design them a switch mode power supply for their tube gear, and especially for their tube phonostage. And the switch mode power supply was much quieter than the linear power supply. In this instance, presumably, the linear power supply is an upgrade because they're charging us $600 for it. Yes. And so I hope that I will conclude that it's not money spent for nothing. Now, now, at the same time that this headphone amplifier and preamp called Velo came out, the same company has also introduced a DAC that our friend Michael Lavonia has already previewed. And that's called the Aero, and it has an R2R chip, which is the AD1865, which has a very good reputation, and it's being used in an audio note DAC that I think retails for 50,000 euros. It's used by Arias Serrat in a model called Cassandra Rev 2, which uses 12 of them per channel. And that DAC is the first one in the LTA range to have balanced outputs. It's the first one that's single-ended, not push-pull. And it's 4,000 euros. And uses the same 6 SN7 tubes. So I have reviewed prior LTA product, and all I will say, because this just came in today, I can't possibly know what it sounds like, but if it does what the previous LTA models did, it falls right between solid state and tubes in its qualities. And the reason for that, I strongly believe, is the absence of the typical tube output transformer. And the reason why I say that is that I have a preamp by Vinnie Rossi, which is no longer made, that direct couples its 300Bs without transformer and without capacitors. And then I have compared that to a Manley and to an Alnic Audio 300B preamp, both of which had output transformers. And the output transformers have a fingerprint, and they sound slower, they sound softer, they don't sound as resolved, they don't sound as energetic, and I'm reasonably certain that that's sort of the signature of what a classic tube output transformer does. So if you want a tube preamp and headphone amplifier, or DAC now from LTA, that does not sound like that, but it doesn't sound like solid state either. It's sort of kind of in the middle. The tubes are easy to replace, and they're not expensive. The whole set in this Velo can be had for 100 euros, all the 4 tubes. And you can now go on Amazon and Linlai and PS Vane, especially PS Vane, they have a new line of tubes called Horizon, and they sell them exclusively on Amazon. So you have return privileges, and no matter where you live, Amazon will dropship them to you. So you don't have to deal with some Chinese website or manufacturer, which is super convenient these days. And the last thing, which is very obvious, but which a lot of people that have never done tubes don't appreciate, is tube rolling. Now, why would that be of interest? Most owners of solid state gear don't even know what the transistors are inside their preamp or amplifier. They don't even care. Is it a bipolar? Is it a Sanken? Is it a Toshiba? Is it an Exicon MOSFET? Doesn't matter. All I will say here is that there's people that breed roses because they are pursuing new colors and especially new fragrances. They cross them to come up with some special new breed. And all tubes, they can be the same make, but from a different age, from a different year, or a different manufacturing plant, they will sound different. And so if you have the option of swapping out tubes without making any adjustments whatsoever, you can change the sound. And you can change the sound sometimes in quite drastic ways. I mean, easily noticeable, not hair scratching, none of that. And you can't really do that with a solid state amplifier unless you have one of those rare ones that have sort of socketed op amps, where you can pull a socket, an op amp out and put another one in. That's quite rare, but that can be done. But that's one of the joys of owning tube gear, that you can change and you can sort of explore. And if a set costs you €100, and let's say you buy 5 sets for less than 1,000, just to play around, and now you have mix and match, you change the input tubes, you change the output tubes, you have maybe 20 different configurations you can try out. It can teach you about nuances, and it can teach you about what it is that you like. It's not like one way or the highway. And so this is like sort of sampling, 17 different ice cream flavors rather than just one.
Yeah. All right, Srajan, I'm going to start this one with a question for you.
Okay.
And that question is, what was your product of the year last year?
The FiiO R7.
Right. Now, I think, not just because of that, but also the R9 that followed it and a bunch of other stuff that FiiO have been making, I think they are one of the most exciting hi-fi companies on the planet right now. And also because they're looking after, I guess, what we would call frugal files, or people, with not a great amount of cash to spend. Although I will, before I get into this, let me just qualify something. Is you're not poor if you can pay your rent, your mortgage, your food bills, your heating bills, feed your family if you have one, if you've got a car, a mobile phone, a laptop, and maybe a basic hi-fi system. So if you've only got $1,000 in hi-fi, but you can do all the rest, you are not poor. You are very well off relative to most people in the world, right? So I say all of that because I've got 2 products. It was only going to be one, but another one was announced today. So FiiO are kicking goals in 2 different areas. I'll keep it quick. The first one is a DAC called the K11, but it's the R2R version. It's a new R2R version. I think it might be the most affordable resistor ladder DAC on the market right now because it's about €160. It's a headphone amp as well. It has a display on the front. The headphone amp is balanced and single-ended. I did email FiiO this morning saying, who makes your R2R boards or your circuit? And they said, we do. We develop the whole thing in-house.
Wow.
So yes, there's I think 40, I'm reading from my notes. I know there's 48 resistors per channel, but it's per side per channel because it's balanced output as well. But there are RCA sockets to connect it to a normal sort of like loudspeaker amplifier. But yeah, there's 2 operational modes. So it's NOS and then oversampling. The oversampling takes everything to 384 kilohertz. And yeah, it's just a super affordable. It looks like it's a very well made, sort of reasonably small. Obviously, we'll have a picture on the screen. Headphone amp and DAC. But because it's R2R, that tends to attract a lot of people because people ascribe a certain sort of mellowness of sound to R2R DACs, I think. They're not all like that, but people are drawn to these kinds of things. And I think it's one of the reasons that Denafrips was so successful was because they made R2R increasingly more affordable as they went on. And now FiiO have just gone, well, we can do it for €160.
And the amazing thing, based on what you just said, is that it is a discrete R2R. It's not based on a chip.
Correct. Sorry. Yes, I should qualify that. Yes, it's their own little board. It's not like some R2R chip. It's their own discrete circuit that they've developed in-house. I think that's pretty cool. But also today, they announced, I've got to find it. I've got to find my notes now. This is stupid. Here we are. They've announced a portable CD player. And we've seen a couple of portable CD players come up in the last couple of years. One from Moondrop, which I think made a big splash, so much so that I don't think they can make them anymore. The last communication I had with Moondrop was that they're struggling to make them, or there's another production run, but they don't know when it's going to be. I think there was one by Shanling, but I think that was sort of functionally hindered in some way, whereas this one from FiiO has 3.5mm and 4.4mm balanced outputs. It has an analog output for connecting straight to an integrated amp or headphone amp. It's got Toslink out for connecting to a DAC. It's got USB out for connecting to a DAC, which is very unusual. But it's a portable CD player, so you could walk it out the house with the internal battery. The details on it are a bit sketchy, I think. I think really this press release has only gone out because it's debuting at CanJam London this weekend. I'm pretty sure it's not quite ready yet because, well, the press release says it's not shipping till September, so that's pretty conclusive in my book.
Do we have a price?
Yes, we do. I'll get to that in a minute. Battery life is 8 hours. It also reads CDs where the music is burnt as sort of data files. Okay. So it'll read FLAC, WAV, WMA, AAC, and MP3. So it kind of does everything. It looks pretty attractive. It's got a nice front panel display. Price, $179 or 179 quid. But
that is unbelievable, isn't it?
Right, but not shipping till September. But I really think, I'll get away from my notes now. I really think that it's not just the price, but it's the price and what I anticipate being fairly decent build quality. But the fact it has Toslink out and USB out, so it can be used on a low board into a normal hi-fi system if you want to. But then if you want to take it to work with a couple of discs, you can. I think that's really cool, you know?
Me too.
And I also thought, okay, well, you could probably get the CD player and then connect it to the K11 R2R DAC, and you've got like an amazing headphone setup as well. Because I'm pretty sure the headphone amp in the K11 will be a bit beefier than what's in the CD player, because FiiO haven't announced power ratings for, I don't think for either actually. Or maybe they have for the DAC, but not the CD player yet. But I think it's, you know, it's amazing that a company can, well, I mean, they did a portable cassette player a few months ago, right? Yeah. And they're still selling that. And now they're doing CDs. I think it's really cool. I think it's great. And it's all relatively affordable.
Brilliant.
Amazon territory. Yeah. I don't need to review it. You can buy one, try it, and then send it back if you don't like it.
Exactly.
Anyway, that was super short, wasn't it, Srajan? That was my next item. So back to you.
I'm going to be just as short. I'm going to play head case again. And I'm going to lead again with a question to you, which is that when you consider buying one of them guys,
headphones,
an over-ear headphone, what is pretty much the first decision that you have to make before you even worry about make, model, and price?
I would say it's, do I want an open back or a closed back?
Yes, correct. Now, why does it have to be either or? Why couldn't it be both?
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So now we have what I think is the world's first convertible headphone from a new company called Palma Audio out of Spain. Mm-hmm. And for 2,200 euros, they have the DHS-1 headphone. Mm-hmm. Its ear cups are made out of solid wood sapele. Sapele is part of the mahogany family, and among other things, it's used for the backs, the sides, and sometimes even the tops of acoustic guitars and electric guitars. It's also used in 26 and 36-foot harps, so it's considered to be a tone wood.
Okay, right.
So solid sapele cups. On the ends, covering those cups, are aluminum discs. And those sticks, one on each side, have a pattern of holes. Mm-hmm. And in one position, those holes remain open, and then you twist that plate by 14 degrees, and suddenly all the holes in the sapele cup are hermetically sealed. So with a single twist of the end plates, you keep switching back and forth between sealed and open back. Mm-hmm. Now, the sensitivity in open back mode is 107 dB per 1 milliwatt. That is really high. Now, what do you reckon that changes to when you now seal the holes? So half the sound stays in rather than going out. Would it go up or would it go down?
Well, this is a tricky one because generally my experience with closed back headphones is the sensitivity goes down.
In this case, it goes up.
Right.
Because we have more gain. We are not losing half the sound to the outside world. It stays in, and we haven't changed anything else. We haven't changed driver. We haven't changed magnets. We haven't changed anything. It goes to 109. It is 2 dB more efficient when it is sealed. Impedance is 32 ohms.
But does that mean then that a lot of sound is being reflected backwards towards the ears from the now closed?
Yes.
That's the exterior.
That's what it. Yeah. It's like being in a room where the speakers reflect off all the walls. And the question is, has this company managed to minimize the negative effects? But we should also say that the time distance of the sound traveling inside a small ear cup, bouncing back and then going into the ear is very, very small. The time delay compared to what would happen in a room. But you're correct that compared to open back, now suddenly we have reflections that are happening slightly delayed in time. So the question will be, what else have they done on the inside of their cup to mitigate that? That I don't know. I haven't seen pictures of the whole assembly. We will show a picture of the empty cup and of the driver. What goes on in between them, we don't know. Impedance, 32 ohms. Weight, 490 grams. Provided ancillaries, a 3.5 mil and a 6.3 mil terminated cable, one 1.8 meters, one 2.2, and the hard case. And that's the Palma Audio DHS-1, the world's apparently first convertible headphone. And why I think that's interesting is that we can now compare without changing anything else. We only change one parameter: seal loading, open back loading. And I think that is a good case study for what the difference in sonic signature is. How much is there? And what improves or what maybe doesn't? What goes sort of backwards?
But don't most closed back headphone manufacturers work very hard to minimize the reflections that come back towards the ear from the cup?
They do. But I also believe that most headphone manufacturers would admit, whether openly or behind the scenes, that their open-backed headphones have sonic advantages. That if you're not locked in by circumstance where you can't leak sound to have to buy a closed-back headphone, that they would still recommend the open-backed route. And I believe that even this company, Palma, would say that the superior version is the open-backed. But they have minimized the difference, and they now allow us to also take the same headphone from the privacy of our house into a cab or onto the tube and just quickly change it and now not leak sound, which I thought was a cool feature. I've never seen it before.
I've not seen that before. Okay.
Over to you.
Back to me. What am I going to talk about now? I think it's back to my old hobby horse, Srajan. It's back to room treatments, room acoustics. But this is good news, and again, for people who don't have a large amount of money to spend, because there was no press release for this. I just literally stumbled across it because every so often I'll have a look through what IKEA is selling, and a couple of weeks ago, I found a whole new range of office furniture that they are now offering, and amongst that office furniture are some acoustic panels. And I honed in on two models. It's called the whole range is called MITTZON, which is MITTZON or ZON if you're in the USA. And there are two different models of different thicknesses. One sells, I'll just give you the basic measurements. So a freestanding acoustic panel, it's 157 by 90.
Okay.
So 157 tall, 90 wide. It sells for €200. If you want one on casters, so you can move it around more easily, and one that's 205 centimeters tall, so just a bit taller than me, but 85 wide, that's 250. So there are different options available now from IKEA that you can try to treat your room with. Now, why is this important? Because you can buy, I think, freestanding acoustic panels from the likes of Vicoustic or, what's the other company? I've forgotten the name. Goodness me. GIK Acoustics. But I think the interesting thing about them coming from IKEA is that they're easily available. You can go and buy them. And again, if they're not to your liking, you can take them back. And you won't have somebody giving you the 10th degree as to why when you want to do that, because it's IKEA. Now, I'm not saying everybody should do this, because this is not obviously a behavior that doesn't scale. So everybody bought it, tried it, and sent it back. It's not going to work. But I think if you had 2 of these sort of freestanding panels together, and one of the models, they do interlock. It's the one that's not on casters, so just the one with the metal frame at the bottom. You could put that at the first reflection point of your, say maybe to the right and the left of your loudspeakers. So you buy 4 panels, so you're in for about €800. And I think that would have a fairly significant effect on the sound quality of your loudspeakers. It will always also have a fairly significant effect on the look of your room, and whether, the rest of your family is down with it, that's a matter for you. But I like the idea that IKEA are mainstreaming. Well, these aren't actually, to be fair, these aren't designed for like room acoustics.
They're for office dividers.
They're for office dividers, because the great open plan office is, I think, a hugely failed experiment. I've worked in open plan offices. They're miserable because it's just so noisy. So it's to kind of break up conversations and noise in an office. These panels will do nothing for bass,
right? Because
they're not thick enough. They would need to be maybe 2 feet thick to even do anything with bass. But they'll do something with higher frequencies and mid-range, especially when it comes to reverb, which is generally most people's problems or biggest problem in a room. I know there's always the bass problems, but there's not a lot you can really do about that passively, not without great expense and great physical intrusion.
What do these look like? Yeah. What's the finish? Is it like a solid grey, or what are we talking about?
Well, it's kind of hard to work it out, but I think they have removable cloth covers.
Oh, really?
So it's like a beige with a wavy pattern on it on the outside.
Okay.
On one of them, and I think the other one is just a smooth cover. But I believe both of them come off. Both the covers come off. They are washable. I think one of them weighs 23 kilos. The other one I think is a bit less. So they're not too. 22 is the other one. So they look like fairly anonymous office acoustic panels. I guess they're okay style. They don't look too boring. I might actually get a pair for to my where I'm sitting right now. To my immediate left is the right-hand speaker, and then to the right of that, obviously, there's the balcony door. And I might consider putting a pair just there, just to see what it does, Mm-hmm. But I just love the idea that IKEA are making this kind of thing super accessible to everybody, and I would like people to know about it, which is why I'm talking about it here. Like I say, no press releases. It's just something I stumbled across in my travels on the internet when I was bored one day.
That's brilliant. Okay, I'm going to play head case again, and this time I'm going to talk about something without being specific on the make or the model.
It's 5 p.m, Srajan, and your cat needs feeding.
It is
it's like clockwork.
You're an hour early. He has a Swiss brain. So...
do you want to go and feed your cat? Like he's going to be...
yeah.
A few moments later.
Without being specific about which model or brand I'm talking about, and the reason will be clear in a moment. So it's a year ago, exactly. So June 2023, I reviewed something, let's call it the Model 1. It sells for €15,000.
Oof.
Okay, a year passes, and last week I get an email. Hello, Srajan, I hope you're well, blah, blah, blah. I'm informing you that the Model 1 that you reviewed has been discontinued. It has been replaced by the Model 2. Please attach, find the price list and photos. I take a look. Looks exactly the same. I see no difference whatsoever. The price now is €28,000. That's virtually double.
Okay.
Could you please make an amendment to your review to not confuse the customer?
Nope.
I explained that whatever price is published is always understood to be as of the date of publishing, and that unless I made a mistake and the manufacturer catches it 2 days later, in which case I will obviously fix it. I'm not in the habit of going back in a year or two later, and I have 22 years worth of archives and keep changing pricing to keep them consistent. And so I explained that I can't possibly change the price. And he says, no, I understand. You can't go in there and just sneakily just edit out the price. He says, but can you just put a small statement at the bottom of the review to let people know that this model is no longer available, and the new model is now called the Model 2, and it's basically double the money. And I said, no, I can't do that either. But I said, what you should be doing is you should have that statement next to the link to my review on your website. Said, you must manage this. This is not for me to manage. And he says, okay, we'll do that. Thank you very much. And off he went. I went and took a look at his website where my review used to be linked to. My review has now disappeared for obvious reasons. What I also explained to him, and this is what I want to talk about in this podcast with you, is that even if it was possible for me to put a note at the bottom of the review and saying basically, here's the Model 2 replacement, it basically looks exactly the same, but it's twice the money now, and leave it at that, that would immediately negate my review. Because by doubling the price, any enthusiasm or any lack thereof now needs to be changed and edited. I have to change the wording. I have to change the way things are being weighted. It basically invalidates the entire review. I might as well cancel it. It's served its purpose. That product no longer exists, and we are done. And I found it a little bit peculiar that this manufacturer wanted to have this statement amended to not confuse his customers. And I thought it would actually make it worse by pointing out the fact that a year prior the same product was half the money, and now why is it suddenly twice and it doesn't look any different? Now I have a pretty good feeling why that happened, because this has happened before more than once. And that is, if I happen to be the first reviewer in the world to review a product, and if the review is even halfway exciting, I think it's a good product and it's fairly priced, blah, 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 the manufacturer will get now inquiries from dealers and distributors.
Yep.
And particularly the distributors will want to know what their margins are. How much am I going to make? And how much then is the dealer going to make? And suddenly the manufacturer realizes, oh shit, we haven't accounted for all the intermediate layers and for the initial store discount, one to show, one to go. There's all kinds of discounts that need to be worked out. We haven't accounted for that. And suddenly when they tell the people the prices that they intend to charge, all the interest goes away. And they realize that a year after that review, all the inquiries have resulted in exactly zero. They haven't got zero dealers. What do they need to do? They need to adjust the pricing to build in the margins so that the business can be done on the high street. Now, if it's an amplifier, you put in a steel plate. You make it a lot heavier. You change the faceplate. You call it a Mark II.
Or you can change the capacitors and you can make minor circuit
or you can do more and give more justification for a sudden price increase. But if you don't do any of that, if you keep it exactly the same, I think you'll have a hard time with those people that remember the original price. So it's actually better in this case that my review is not being linked to, and most people will probably not even remember it. But it's a peculiar situation, and I just wanted to bring it to our viewers and readers' attention that price is intrinsically embedded in a review and in the reviewer's opinion. You can't separate the two, and you can't afterwards change the price and think that you can leave the review alone. I would have to literally rewrite the review, and let's say that there was an award attached, which in this case it wasn't, but let's say there was, because it was outstanding for the price. At double the money, the award would no longer apply. I would have to pull it. That would be a very strange thing as well. So all this by way of saying that if you're a new manufacturer and you're approaching any reviewer, and you know it's going to be the first review in the world, just be aware that you get your pricing right, because there's little quite as embarrassing and sort of counterproductive as making a splash, creating interest, and then realizing that you made a big mistake and you can't actually sell that product for that price and stay in business.
Well, I think there are two pillars by which you or I might judge a product. The first and the biggest pillar is the price. Mm-hmm. The second pillar is comparisons to similarly priced rivals.
Correct.
Right? Those are the two main pillars by which I work, and I know you do as well. So if you suddenly shift that, you not only shift the first pillar, but then any comparisons you've done in that initial review are out of the window.
Null and
because
void.
They're no longer similarly priced rivals. You need to go up several notches. The second thing I would say is, if you're right about the whole trying to get dealers into the mix on this product, what this price jump effectively tells us, if you're correct, right? Is that dealers and distributors effectively double the price of a direct sell product.
Often more than that, yes. But yes, and I think that's not a surprise to an educated buying public, that if you're buying a product that comes into the country, not just to a dealer, but there's a distributor, like a big country like the United States may need. You may need a distributor to service the dealers in a rather large territory. Yeah, there's margins built in. So if the dealer needs to make a certain margin, and the distributor who is traveling around the country with a van and product in the back, and the distributor is also responsible for warranty repairs, and the distributor is responsible for show participation in his market.
Yep.
And he's also responsible in getting advertising, and he's responsible for pursuing reviews in his territory. All of that costs money, so the distributor can't work on 5 or 10%. But yes, you add those margins, the price easily doubles, and sometimes more than.
Yes, I think, I know that a lot of my audience seem to be unaware of this completely.
Really?
Because they ask things like, well, why does this cost so much? You know, it's only made of this, this, and this, and this. I'm like, well, the price isn't just what it's made of, plus 10% for the manufacturer. And I'm not going to go into other percentage numbers because this story speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I don't want to upset any distributor or dealer around the world, but
let me personalize it. I used to be a sales and marketing manager, and my job was to sign up dealers. So my boss at the time bought me a van, because I said I need to have a big enough car to throw all our stuff in the back. So he bought me a van, and then I was on the road. And I would be on the road for 3 weeks nonstop. And every day I would collect all my receipts for the hotel, and of course I stayed cheap, and for the food, and for the gas. And you'd be surprised at the expense of just sending me around, knocking on doors, doing presentation at dealers, hoping that somebody will be interested in the product and take it on. Just that cost, and then my fee, my salary, and the amount of time it takes for a new product to be presented in a country. It could be a year before you start seeing sales. I mean, you get initial sales where dealers will have a product on the floor, but the time from that product showing up to that dealer calling the distributor with first orders, sometimes it takes a year for the dealer to figure out how to present it, how to get the best sound, how to overcome customer reluctance that this is a new brand, do I want to invest in it, should I not buy something out? So there's expenses involved in just establishing a new product in a market that most consumers are completely oblivious about. And then, of course, you have the high street dealer, which is an incredible rent. If he's in a good location, don't ask him what he's paying every month just on rent. And then on the 3 or 4 salespeople he has on the floor that he has to pay whether they sell or not, unless they're purely on commission. That's a different... Unlikely.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of expenses that go well beyond a do-it-yourselfer, just ordering parts online and then putting it together in the garage, you know?
Yeah, or maybe I just see a lot of naivety in the YouTube audience because it's a broader mainstream audience, and maybe they just... well, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah. All right, back to me, isn't it? Back to me. I want to talk about a pair of streaming active loudspeakers from France. Now, I'll preface this by saying this type of speaker, this speaker system, works in the same way as a book art system. So it's got this hub, which is like a little black box that you connect to your network, either Wi-Fi or wireless, and it also takes hardwired inputs like Toslink, HDMI ARC, analog, coax, USB. And then whatever it receives, as well as streaming, it then streams left and right channels independently to receivers in the loudspeakers themselves. And this system is called the WISA system. The hub is made by a company called Platin, although this company is called Triangle. Most people know who Triangle are, a well-known French loudspeaker company. I believe this is their first streaming active. It's called the Capella, and it works with this WISA system like a book art does. It's a two-way, and each driver gets 50 watts of Class D amplification, so I think that's very different to the book art. I mean, I'm mainly drawing the book art comparison so people know how the whole system works, but there are no master tunings here. I don't believe there's any analog input on the back of a speaker. I'm pretty sure there isn't. I think everything has to go through the hub. But I would say, I can't really show, well, we'll put a picture up, obviously, for the people that are watching on YouTube, but the people that are listening are going to be shit out of luck. This is a very attractive looking speaker.
I've seen that. The finish is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks beautiful. It's like this high gloss, sort of marbly type wooden finish. There's a white, there's a blue, there's a sort of burled wood. It really does look the business. I'm not saying that means it's going to sound as good as the book art, but it's just another take on that particular type of system. The low bass reach is not as good as the book arts. It's down to 42 hertz at minus 3 dB. The book arts go into the 20s. But what is unusual about this one is what gave me pause in taking it on a review pair, well, along with my schedule, is that there's like a metal frame that runs around the bottom of each loudspeaker. So it would look amazing on a low board or a credenza or whatever. But it means I think you really have to use Triangle's stands so that they are the perfect fit for that frame. Mm-hmm. So the top plate of the stand meets the frame. There's a slight air gap because these are downward firing, I believe. The port is on the bottom.
Right.
So it fires downwards, which is very different and very unusual. So there needs to be some exit space for the bass reflex airflow to kind of leave the speaker. But that also might mean that these would be better closer to a wall and therefore, on your credenza, on your sideboard. I don't know, but I think they look very attractive. I think if you're not the power user who wants XLR inputs on the back or master tunings, or even, I don't think it does room correction. I could be wrong, but I'm sorry. It does do room correction in the same way as the book art does. Obviously, the streaming suite is the same as the book art, so we get Bluetooth, Chromecast, AirPlay, Spotify Connect, and Roon Ready. And then inside Triangle's own app, you get Cobas, Tidal, Deezer, and also basic room correction if you've got the iOS version. If you've got Android, you're going to have to use the Zen microphone, which is sold separately, or borrow somebody else's iPhone to set it up. But I think the biggest difference between the Capella from Triangle and the book art A500 is price, because these Capellas sell for $2,500 or $2,800 and the stands are about $300-ish a pair. So it's a complete hi-fi system in a box. And I think if you ask me which is my favorite way to implement streaming actives, it is this way, with the intermediary box that you can sort of tuck away out of sight, so you don't get all the cable vomit coming off the back of the primary speaker. You don't have to worry about a digital interlink. I mean, not all of them do, but some of them, want to see a cable looped between the two. Mm-hmm. So this is the great advantage of the WiSA speaker, and I guess you could extend it with other WiSA speakers or a WiSA sub. But it's very, very attractive, and I think the pricing is more attractive than the book art, even though it's not as power user friendly, if you know what I mean. It's not for the nerds. This Capella is not for the nerds. It's for somebody who wants to. I don't want to use the word lifestyle because that's so pejorative in many people's minds. It's just. It looks beautiful. The system. I thought it was very
especially that blue finish that I saw. I thought that was really special.
Yeah, and I think I don't know whether this speaker will do very well for them. I hope it does. I won't be reviewing it. I don't have the time to review it, but if I did have the time, I absolutely would because it looks really cool.
So here's my last head case, and I'm going to run a few names by you and see your reaction. I'm going to have to go to my cheat sheet to make sure I don't forget any of them. So I'm going to throw out Silent Power, Exact Express, Choco Sound, Satri Circuit Labs, Chroma Atelier. Does any of that ring a bell?
The first one does, the Silent Power, because that's a new sub-brand from iFi.
Correct.
I don't know about the rest, though.
So this is the subject matter that I wanted to talk about and also get your opinion. It's about rebranding or spinning off sub-brands.
Yes.
So the Silent Power, they have a product, I'm just going to mention it very briefly, which is called the LAN Eye Purifier Pro, which sells for 299 euros. And a long time ago in a previous podcast, I talked about using media converters between our incoming Ethernet and then our server. And that if we have to maybe send 25 or 30 meters worth of LAN cable signal across our house, that we can have a performance improvement if we go to optical fiber instead. But then we need media converters on either end. Well, this LAN Eye Purifier Pro from Silent Power does all of that in one little box. So we go RJ45 in, then we hit a switch, a chip that converts the signal to optical. Then we reconvert from optical back to copper RJ45 and we go out. So we have RJ45 in, RJ45 out, and we have all the optical conversion and back happening on the inside of the same box to do galvanic isolation to like the nth degree. It's not very expensive considering, and we don't have all of that cable vomit going on. That's all I want to say about the product. I'm really more about rebranding and splitting off sub-brands. So that the other one that you didn't recognize, Exact Express, this is a new offshoot from Kinky Studio. Kinky Studio introduced a new cable line last year that I really, really enjoyed. Extremely well made, not very expensive, and very good performance. For some reason, they decided that those cables should not be part of the amplifiers and preamplifiers that they're selling. So they developed this new brand called Exact Express, which to me sounds like a 1 hour print shop. I think it's a terrible name. And they also have audiophile fuses coming and a DC blocker for those people whose transformers hum. And that's going to be under yet another sub-brand whose name I have not been able to get yet. But that's not going to be part of Exact Express. That's just for cables. There's going to be another brand. Choco Sound is another subsidiary of Kinky Studio, which presently only has one integrated amplifier, which looks different than all the Kinky Studio ones. Satri Circuit Labs is the new name of Bakun, Japan. And you and I have reviewed product from Bakun, Korea that had been rebranded to Enleum or Enleum. I've never heard it pronounced. So Bakun, Korea became Enleum, and now Bakun, Japan is becoming Satri Circuit Labs, which abbreviates SCL, another very anodyne name. Chroma Audio became Chroma Atelier, which is a very, very small change. And the reason I know, the two original founders split and the company had to restructure. And in order to make all the involved parties happy, the name had to be changed. But they were very careful to change as little as possible. So Chroma Audio to Chroma Atelier, nobody will notice. But my question to you is, what do you think about rebranding? Do you have any idea as to what some of the reasons might be why companies decide to do it? And then lastly, does it matter to have a good name? What's the power in the name? And can you dilute or possibly destroy or at least weaken the brand name that you already have established by suddenly calling it something else?
Well, I think it's determined by the nature of the products that you're spinning off. So in the first two cases, you've got a galvanic isolator for Ethernet transmission, and you've got cables, right?
Well
now,
it's not just this one product from Silent Power. The entire cable and accessory part of the iFi catalog is now under Silent Power. So they haven't just spun it off for one product. They have spun it off for all of the, I guess, accessories.
All of the Voodoo widgets. Let's call them what people will call them.
Okay.
People will call them Voodoo, right? Now, I'm not saying they are.
Okay.
Let's be very clear. I am not saying they are. But because this is a word that comes up quite a lot, community.
Okay.
The hi-fi community barely exists in the real world. It's mainly online. And it is, I think it's infected a little bit by a bunch of bully boys. And so when anybody sees something that they don't like, that they don't think can make any difference, they'll just go, that's snake oil, that's voodoo. And I think that can have a detrimental effect on the reputation of a brand making that product. So if you want to introduce something to the market that could be perceived that way, correctly or incorrectly, it might be prudent to spin it off on a sub-brand, just so that your main brand doesn't take the reputational hit should the conversation among the online community go south, which it probably will in many areas, because the internet's getting worse in terms of division and hostility. There's no doubt about it. So maybe some of these companies are realizing that and thinking, well, we don't want to have the iFi brand tarnished by the bitching and conniving that goes on the net. Let's just spin it off into Silent Power. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and we don't take the hit. That's my best guess.
Okay.
That's what I thought instantly when I saw that. But I could be wrong. There could be another reason.
With Kinky Studio, I believe that one reason for spinning off the cables was that they did not want to be perceived as their cables only working with Kinky Studio products. That's how it was explained to me, that they wanted to separate that. I'm just not sure about the name Exact Express, Alibaba Express. Does it matter? Do names matter? And how much do they matter?
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do. I mean, Silent Power is quite a good name.
I think so too.
I think. But yeah, Exact Express. I mean, it just sounds. Yeah, you're right. Just a bit weak and a bit tacky. And it's too late for them to change it. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much money goes into paying somebody to come up with a name and a logo and all the sort of associated branding, colours, all the sort of the design language that goes on around a brand. I would imagine that iFi would have paid quite significantly for Silent Power's branding. I don't know anything about the Kinky Exact Express, but it's just, yeah. I mean, maybe that's a word that's very much in vogue in Asia, the word express. Possibly. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Possibly, yes.
So maybe they've just kind of latched onto it and thinking, well, that's kind of cool. But express also communicates, a certain lower quality because you're getting it in a rush. So you can't, it's like the
fast food.
Well, yeah, fast food or fast turnaround means if you're not paying more, you're not going to get the same quality. So I don't know, but I don't see why they would not want to brand their cables as Kinky Studio. I mean, they've got a fairly solid brand, I think. But again, because of Denafrips pulling out of Vinshine Audio, I don't know what's going on with a lot of these brands and what their thinking is in terms of penetrating Western markets. I mean, because FiiO have done it themselves, as have Shandling, but Shandling have been around for decades, so it's a bit different for them.
I believe maybe it's to do with the pricing. that beyond a certain pricing, direct sales become more difficult. Then you want representation in the high street. But now it might make sense to split off a brand where the more expensive products that you're trying to sell through the high street have one name, and the more affordable product that doesn't weigh a whole lot, can't break in transit, like a little dongle DAC or an interconnect, you call that something else, that you sell pretty much exclusively direct, which is much easier to do. Then I can see how it makes sense to split off a brand.
Yeah, I mean it's a funny one, but I don't know. I mean I don't ever really cover cables, and I did see the iFi Silent Power Press release, and it's one of those. If it was a really slow news week, I might have covered that, but it wasn't, so I didn't, because it's a controversial thing, rightly or wrongly. I mean, I would say chances are it makes a small difference. And based upon my previous experience with iFi's reclocking products and things like that. But there's so much hostility now towards this type of product online that I think it's harder to convince the customer even to try it for themselves. If they don't like it, just move it on. I don't know.
Well, here's what I would say about cables in general, which I have learned now, that the most important thing, I believe, is to get one's cable loom consistent. So I'd much rather have an entry-level but complete cable loom from one company than a mix and match of sort of posh, expensive, exotic cables from all kinds of different companies. Because we don't have impedance standards, we don't have conductor standards, we don't have dielectric standards. So if you mix and match, you might like the result, but you're not arriving at a place where the sum of the parts exceeds them. So 1 + 1 might be 2, but you're not going to get to 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 suddenly. That can happen if you have a consistent loom, where your power cabling, your interconnects, your digital cables, they're all from one manufacturer, they all use the same design concept. They're all looking at the same things in the same way. I've done this now with Kinky Studio. I've reviewed the entry-level cable that then still used to be called Kinky Studio. I just reviewed the Exact Express, which is the next level up. And I realized that the difference between the two is not that big. But that it was more important to now be consistently cabled, including now finally I got power cords from the same company. So I could have a system wired up completely with the same brand. And that suddenly made that particular signature of the cable jump forward. Because it was so consistent, 1 + 1 + 1 suddenly did equal 5 or 6 or 7. It made more of a difference, and that particular sound that I liked in the cable sort of multiplied more than I expected it to. So that's the only thing I would say about cables that I've learned after 22 years, is that I believe in a consistent front to back loom. The other thing I wanted to say about dinner flips is all I learned over the years that I've worked with Windshine Audio is that dinner flips, I believe last year, moved into a new factory. Very, very large. And I believe that at that point in time, they had something like 60 employees. And they might have had an engineering staff of at least 10. So they have grown a lot. And I do believe that the sales volume that they need on a consistent basis, just to keep the lights on and keep all the employees in bread and accommodations, exceeded what a lone global distributor like Windshine Audio could do. Now, whether they will be successful, whether dinner flips from China can build a dealer network for their more expensive products so that sales will exceed what one guy can do globally, that I don't know. But that's probably what they are hoping. Because otherwise, why leave somebody like Windshine Audio? I think he was doing an excellent job. And
me too. Yes, definitely. I feel for him.
Yeah.
Because he did an amazing job in building that brand from nothing. And I hope dinner flips make a go of it in supporting the staff that they've taken on, because I don't want to see staff who have nothing to do with, I guess, the politics of hi-fi just be made redundant because it didn't work out.
Right.
So the one thing I'll say about cables is that, I mean, I don't review them. When I started out, I didn't review them. I had a couple of years of doing them, and then I stopped because it was just causing so much grief. And now I'm very much of the persuasion, especially with the YouTube audience, that reviewing cables makes people angry. Whether you're right or wrong, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter about what you hear. Just makes a sizable portion of your audience, and it only has to be a few percent, for all hell to break loose in the comment section or elsewhere. And it's just, I don't think it's good for the hi-fi industry at large, for, I guess, more mainstream-facing publications to be covering that kind of thing. It doesn't mean I don't use them. I mean, I've used AudioQuest for the last 12 years. But I don't know whether they're the best cable or not. I've got no idea, because I've never really tried. Oh, well, I did spend 6 months going to Blue Jeans cable. I bought a whole bunch. I think we emailed about this in about 2013. I got the speaker cable, interconnects, and I lived with that for a while, and then I put the AudioQuest back and was like, oh my goodness, oh, there's a big difference there. Now there's a big difference in price, so you'd expect that. But I was shocked when I returned to the AudioQuest from the Blue Jean, because I'd momentarily bought into this idea of any well-made cable will do the job, because this is what you hear online consistently. And when I see that now, I ask in my head, well, give me an example of a well-made cable for this and that. But this is not knocking Blue Jeans, because for the money, it's great value, it's exceptionally well made, but it just didn't sound as good. And once I got to that point, I was like, right, I'm not doing this anymore, because even if I tell people that AudioQuest sounds better than Blue Jeans, there'll still be a bunch of people getting their panties in a twist about it, even though I'm using the same review process that I would use for speakers or amps and whatever. Just some people just are very resistant to certain ideas and get angry when you push those ideas under their nose. So that's fine. I just have to kind of go with what I want to do, or keep the tension between what I want to do and what the audience will accept.
Well,
and try and maintain,
and
maintain
you're
that.
a future Fi guy, so a lot of it is wireless anyways. And then if
yes,
then if a lot of things start to integrate, you're dropping a lot of cables there. So you're still down to power cords, and here and there a connection from the hub to the speakers if it's not wireless.
Sure.
But you've certainly diminished the reliance on traditional copper cabling by a large extent.
Yes and no. I mean, the last few reviews I've done, I'm going to do 5 passive speakers in a row. I'm in the middle of it right now.
Okay.
So I won't say it's old school, but it's still old school enough because I know that a lot of my audience want to know about these kinds of things, and I want to know about them as well. So that's just the way it's gone. So I guess I flip between the two, of like old school and then the future Fi stuff, and then come back and do some old school stuff. I mean, because I know there's interest there. I'm interested as well. Like the LS35A, I'd never had a pair before. I think they're bloody brilliant. So I learned something, They're not overrated, not at all. They are really, really lovely. But they need a sub. Definitely need a sub, more than any other speaker I've ever used. But I've got the sub dialed in and it sounds great. But yeah, power cables, but I just don't think it's good. I don't want a newcomer's first exposure to the hi-fi world to be a bunch of dudes duking it out in a comment section about how it's a horse shit and no they're not, and yes they are and no they're not. And I don't want to provide that platform. I really don't. I'm not interested in that. I think that should be hidden away, tucked away so that it's like third level, so that newcomers don't recoil in horror. Like, my God, these audiophiles are insane. I'm out of here. I'm going to go and buy a camera or a new phone or something.
Right.
I think
it's a very fair argument. Yeah.
Tidy shop front.
Yeah.
Just for newcomers. It doesn't have to be for old timers. They can argue as much as they like, but I'm not interested in that. So that's why I don't really do cables anymore. I did a couple of USB cables once. My goodness. Some people are really across the idea, and other people they're not anti it, they're actively hostile towards it, which I don't understand.
Yeah, well.
But anyway, that's my perception of what goes on or what comes back to me, because this is when I had a comment section on my website. I mean, obviously I don't have that anymore because just too much Too much time.
Too much noise. Huh?
Well, it's not that. It's just too much. I don't want to manage little boys. I'm just not interested in doing that.
Yeah.
So I'd rather get on with my own stuff and then just keep moving and just keep going and going and going and going. So anyway, to come back to your original points, Srajan, like in terms of rebranding, I mean, are there any successful either rebrands or sub-brand spin-offs that we could point to that have worked out? I'll give you one.
Okay.
ALO and Campfire Audio.
Yes.
Because Ken used to be Mr. ALO, and then he spun off, just started doing the odd little bit of wired IEMs and Campfire, and now Campfire is the monster, and ALO, I mean, we don't really hear much from that brand anymore.
Well, and then we had, and we know why it had to happen, we had Mr. Speakers become Dan Clark. That was for obvious reasons. And that didn't hurt at all because he was already established, and people understood why he did it. And it wasn't really a spin-off. It was just like, I started out modifying speakers. Now I'm the headphone guy, so the name no longer fits. And you changed from digital audio review.net.au. That's how it was, yeah?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, I mean, but there changes. But the ALO and the Campfire is, ALO was trucking along nicely, and then Ken was like, I'm just going to do some IEMs, but different name. And it blossomed for him, you know. So,
but are they actually still running in parallel as two separate brands to this day, ALO and Campfire?
I don't know what the state of play is with ALO. I'm seeing Ken in a couple of months, so I'll ask him then. But I know he's. Well, do I know that he's good? It's best to say that I don't know what the state of play is with that brand. But I can't really think of. I mean, even some of the bigger companies have they ever spun off a smaller brand to try and satisfy a more niche market? I can't think of one right now. I'm sure there are some, and I'm sure people will let us know, Srajan, in the comments on YouTube, if there's a company that spun off a second brand. I'm not on about a rebrand. I'm on about spun off a second brand, and where that has become the dominant force for that particular CEO or managing director or whatever. I can't think. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be something that's really obvious. But
because when I think of companies that have changed ownership, pretty much all of them, the new owners bought the old company for everything, which included the name and the goodwill associated with it.
Yep.
So when YG Acoustics changed ownership, or when Sonus Faber took over the brand that was started by the original man, they all realized the value in the brand name, and they kept going with it. In fact, to this day, Sonus Faber stays true to the leather and the walnut that was sort of the trademark look of the original Franco Serblin designs. They stayed very true to their roots, at the same time trying to modernize it. But clearly, Sonus Faber, the name, had value, so why change it? When Teal was bought, they kept the name, even though they completely changed the first order time-aligned loudspeaker design philosophy, so that tanked. So why would you buy a company, keep the name, and then completely change what the company's about? That made no sense.
Yeah, but I think, aren't we talking about existing companies not being bought out by anybody who decide, hey, we want to do a different range of products over here on the side. We want to give that a different brand name, a different identity in its entirety. For whatever reason, I mean, maybe it's just a hobby project. I don't know. Maybe, but I really do think in the case of iFi, they probably wanted to peel off all the potentially controversial stuff into something else in case they need to fold it because it doesn't sell or it just becomes too much hassle or too controversial amongst the buying public. They can just fade it out without many people noticing, with no blowback on their main iFi brand. I would think, I'm guessing, I don't know, that's the thinking behind it, but there might be something else.
Well, I would be curious to see whether some of our audience comes up with some other examples that we can't think of right now. Because I was kind of surprised about the Silent Power spin-off, and then to see that all the cables and all these sort of add-on purifiers or conditioners ended up there, and then what stays on iFi is basically the headphone amps and the DACs, sort of more mainstream core hardware.
Yeah, the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
but you're seasoning different brand.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I see it. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of something else, but I can't. I've got nothing.
Well, maybe then it's going to be a wrap for today.
I think it might be, Srajan. I think, well, we've hit close to 2 hours. So, yeah, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, John.